Hey guys, it's Zach back with another review, this time of the JamesDonkey RSR5. This one sort of came out of left field from JamesDonkey, which is indeed a ridiculous company name, but they have made a pretty solid mouse here in the shape of the G-Wolves HTX. I wasn't sure if this mouse would be complete trash or a complete surprise, and it actually erred toward the latter. But is this the new HTX replacement you've been looking for, or just a hee-haw piece of junk? Let's find out. Here we have it, the JamesDonkey RSR5. I swear I cannot get the RSR5, R5, RS straight. But anyway, it's the first real serious gaming mouse from JamesDonkey. A name that I also really can't take seriously, but hey, it's a solid mouse, so let's get into it. Real quick, there's two versions here, the RSR5 and the RSR5S. The RSR5S is a $33.95. The RSR5 having the $39.50. That is a $6 difference. You can make your decision there. I'd say the most interesting part of the internals is the Huano transparent yellow white dots, a switch I've never encountered, and we'll talk about those here in a bit. Otherwise, again, you can choose the $33.95 or the $39.50, 8K polling, WebDriver, and a 600 milliamp hour battery, which does contribute to the slightly higher weight, but is easily mounted down to a lower weight should you want to do that. And with that, let's get into the mouse. So these transparent yellow white dots are mechanical switches. They're about a medium to light actuation, very spammable. You can see the pre and post travel here are very minimal. No grinding there on the shell at all. Pretty cool actuation across the entire button, just a little bit heavier here at the top. Very truly no side to side play, very tight there. The clicks are very well implemented, probably about a 9 out of 10 for me. I do like the feel of the blue shell pink dot just a little bit better. It sounds a bit better, it has a slightly more tactile feeling, but honestly I'm being nitpicky here. These feel very good, very tactile without being too heavy. Pretty much a perfect mechanical switch implementation on the clicks. As far as the steps on the scroll wheel, it's probably a medium step. It's very defined, and the scroll wheel itself is very quiet. The click is also medium actuation and pretty spammable here. Again, not the lightest, but still very usable. You can sort of tell here that the rubber on the scroll wheel feels a little cheap. It feels like sort of like the lower end wedding ring material. There's nothing wrong with it necessarily, but it just didn't feel super high quality to me, so something to take note of there. The side buttons on the mouse are pretty cool looking. They fit sort of the 8-bit theme that the entire bottom of the mouse also has going here. They have like a sort of unique arrow-like design, which I'm not a huge fan of. There's not a lot of side-to-side play here. There is, however, a little bit more pre-trail than I like to see before actuation, but we do hit a hard shell wall here, and we're not sinking in at all when we actuate the button. The sound is a little bit hollow. It's not the most satisfying click, but it's very functional. I don't really see any issues with these buttons in-game. If I had to come up with one more gripe with them, I would say that if you take a look at the side here, they don't really protrude from the shell. They sort of contour the shape of the mouse a bit too much for my liking. Yeah, you can really tell there. They don't protrude very nicely like you would see on maybe an XM2, where those buttons are just really way far out there on the side. Super easy to access. So again, interesting design on the side buttons. Not my favorite implementation, probably a 6 out of 10. Coming to the bottom of the mouse, these skates sort of look like Pulsar stock skates, but they're not. They're much thinner, a little bit lower quality there. As you can see, they pick up some hair and debris as well as the adhesive goes to the edge of the skates. They are on the slightly slower side of average as far as stock skates go and very thin, so they're not my favorite part of the mouse either. One more thing to note here is that you can see the sensor is pretty far forward on the mouse, which will make it feel a little bit more sensitive to small movements. And you can sort of see the hourglass shape of the mouse here. Build integrity on this thing is very good. There's really no flex on the side, really no flex on the bottom anywhere either. There's the slightest bit of give here on the top shell, but nothing that's really concerning to me. Nothing really doing here at the front of the mouse. So overall, very well constructed, and it should be at 55 grams. I did again mention, as noted here, there's a 600 milliamp hour battery on this thing, which does bring the weight up a bit. If you went down to 250, you'd probably get this below 50 grams. Again, not the lightest, especially with this sort of HTX shape, which we'll talk about here in a bit. But I digress, as the build integrity is pretty good. The coating is actually very good. It's reminiscent of the Viper V3 Pro, which is a massive compliment to a mouse and not something I expected here. It is extremely grippy and extremely rubberized. Any hand that's not freezing cold should grip right to this mouse and be locked in with your grip. Honestly, not much else to say. They've got this great colorway here. They've got this great coating. The coating is 9.5 out of 10 because I can't say 10 out of 10 unless I'm looking at the Viper V3 Pro. Sorry. To start off on the shape comparisons, we're bringing back Eloshapes. It's been a while, boys, but here we are. This mouse is virtually an HTX from G-Wolves. I'm sure if we had them side to side, we could detect a few more differences than you see here, but as you can see, the dimensions are very similar. The key fact here is the HTX 4K came in 16 grams lighter than this RSR5, so for the price, you're making a compromise on the weight there, but you're getting a much better coating, and in my opinion, better implemented switches. I will be curious to see if G-Wolves come out with an HTX Ultra. I definitely try that mouse out, but again, we're gonna have to live with Eloshapes as I don't have an HTX on me. Again, the shade's very similar, potentially a little bit narrow here on the JamesDonkey along the sides, and a little bit taller across the mouse, but nothing crazy, maybe 1 millimeter, but then again, the numbers here come out the same, so we're gonna assume they're very similar. We show sensor position here on the HTX. We know it's G-Wolves and it's pretty far forward. One tip on Eloshapes, don't assume if you see only one sensor that they are the same spot. There is no sensor listed here for the JamesDonkey, but as you saw, it's very far forward, so we can assume they're in a pretty similar position. Since I don't have an HTX on hand, we're going to compare this to a few recent smaller banger mice that I reviewed, those being the IPI Float or IPI Float, I don't really care, and the Hitscan Hyperlight. We'll start off with the Float. Hump profiles are pretty similar here, with there being a little bit more height to the hump on the JamesDonkey, which does lock me in a bit more than I experienced on the Float. Pausing real quick, I came back to this today for the first time in a while, and wow, does this just feel good in every way. My review was spot on. I don't regret a single word that I said about this mouse. It is absolutely freaking amazing. Continuing forward here, here, you can demonstrate how absolutely low the click height here is on the JamesDonkey compared to the average medium to small mouse. It really does taper down pretty severely there in the front, which for me is comfortable, but could affect you. And the JamesDonkey also does have pretty nicely defined comfort grooves here, which make the mouse feel very comfortable in hand. The only other real comparison to do here is from the bottom. You can see that there are much flatter sides on the Final Mouse-esque shape of the Float, and the RSR5 here has a lot more side tapering and that sort of defined hourglass shape. Next up, we've got the Hitscan Hyperlight, which is just a very different, very claw-focused style of mouse, but we'll give them a shot at comparison here. As you can see, the hump is a little bit further back due to the slightly shorter length of the Hyperlight, and it's much taller, giving you more palm contact and, in my opinion, locking you in even better. It's the reason why I can use such a small mouse like the Hitscan in Kovacs so comfortably, because that hump does really lock you in. Similar to what you see on the HTX Ultra here, which is currently my favorite small mouse next to the Hitscan Hyperlight. The front view gives you an idea that the click height is not that low on the RSR5. It's not out of this world. Very similar. But again, on the bottom here, we very much demonstrate how flat the sides of a lot of these other smaller mice are, and just how to find this curvature and hourglass shape of the RSR5 or HTX shape is. It flares out more on the back, flares out more on the front as well. Almost sort of like a Maya in that way, I would say. Nope, I was wrong. Even more defined than a Maya. Who knew? Regardless, two very different shapes here for two very different preferences. Overall, I would say my experience with this mouse was surprisingly good. I didn't know what to expect from JamesDonkey. They never really had a serious mouse before this. And honestly, I had assumed that the HTX shape was just too small for me in the past, because when I had one, I just didn't lock in. Something about this makes me lock in just a little bit better. It may be the coating, it may be slight changes in my grip since I last used that mouse. But overall, it allowed me for adequate micro adjustments due to the medium to small leading shape. And in game, no implementation issues like the side buttons or the skates really bothered me that much. I will say on the singularity pad here, these skates were very thin and scratchy. They felt kind of crappy. But on cloth, they weren't that much of a drawback. Again, not great on the slower side. You're going to want to replace them in the long term, but picking this mouse up right off the bat, they are perfectly serviceable. Coming in at sub $60, I would say this mouse is a pretty darn good value. Even with a slightly higher weight, if you're willing to battery mount it down, you'll be in good shape. And honestly, I didn't really have too much of a problem with the 55-gram weight. I was still able to perform very well in aim trainers and in game. Even in tracking scenarios with a slightly lower profile mouse, I didn't really have an issue with that. If you are a G-Wolves homer or you really want the lightest mouse at sub 40 grams to them, I can't blame you for picking up the HTX 4K or potentially waiting for the HTX Ultra, which probably would push something around 30 grams. I will say I wasn't the biggest fan of the 4K series of G-Wolves mice, and I do like the click implementation in this mouse a lot better, as well as the side buttons. G-Wolves had them on the skates. The sensor position is pretty similar. The scroll wheel is better on the G-Wolves mouse as well, but the coating on this is miles ahead of G-Wolves, sort of bearish plastic to lack of coating. So overall, these guys punch back and forth as far as the QC and implementation go, and at $55 to $60, this mouse is a great value, especially for this shape. I will say performance-wise, I didn't notice anything in game, but there was one blip in my MouseTester checking that I wanted to point out to you. This is the graph of the polling rate update interval for the mouse on 8K, and as you can see here, these are a little bit of concerning results. It was the worst on 8K in that we saw sort of like drifting of these polls all the way up to 1 millisecond, which is what you would expect on 1K as opposed to 8K, as well as a bunch really just the whole spectrum here from where you would expect it all the way up to 1 millisecond. This is not the best I've seen on a mouse. I did test this on glass, cloth, no applications open, and no other mice plugged in, and still got these results consistently. On all our polling rates above 1K, for example, on 2K, I'd see one at 1 millisecond. On 4K, I'd see some at half millisecond. So like again, it doesn't seem like the best implementation. I'm not sure it's truly performing at a 2, 4, and 8K as advertised here, which might come down to the dongle size. But again, I didn't notice anything in game, but I wanted you to be aware of this. And if I've spoken out of turn anywhere in here, please let me know below in the comments. For weight on the mouse completely stock, we have it coming in at 57.3 grams. That's about 2 grams over advertised, and would definitely make getting it under 50 grams a little bit challenging with a battery mod unless you were super aggressive with it. We'll grab some measurements for those of you who have an HTX in hand and want to compare. The narrowest point of the grip width here is 54.6 millimeters. Although with a strong tapering, if you move up the mouse in the same spot, you get up to 57.6 millimeters. The back flare comes in at 63.5 millimeters. I'm actually clocking the max hump height at 36.6 millimeters, a little bit below advertised. And where my thumb sits on the back taper start here is 63.3 millimeters. So that about wraps up for my thoughts on the JamesDonkey RSR5. It's not an out of this world mouse, but it's pretty solid. And to my knowledge, the only clone of the HTX that we have. It's solid clicks and amazing coating, where not to bring me back to using it occasionally, but it's probably not something that will be staying on my desk long term. At the price and with the shape, I'd say if you don't want to spend the full price on the HTX, this is a valid mouse to pick up. It's a bit on the heavy side without the battery mod, but again, I did not feel that in game. Overall, there were no major issues with it, and as the first sort of serious gaming mouse offering from JamesDonkey, I came away pretty pleased. Please subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. Follow me on Twitter, join up with my Discord, check out the MouseCast podcast, and with that, we'll see you.